So if you're dealing with erectile dysfunction, well, that's no fun. What's the fun in that? And most people feel like it's some kind of testosterone thing, and testosterone is part of that formula. But in this video, I'm going to help you understand the most common cause of erectile dysfunction. And when you hear it, it's going to do this weird thing. It's going to make sense. You're going to be like, oh, well, that makes sense. Of course it's not going to work when that's going on. So not only are you going to understand what's going on, but I'm going to give you 5 steps you can take to improve it yourself. So let's go.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So if you went ahead and typed erectile dysfunction into Google, not only are you now seeing non-stop ads for little blue fancy pills wherever you go on the internet, but you also found that the information was not that helpful and maybe a little bit confusing. You know, it almost appears like the medical world views erectile dysfunction as being caused by cardiovascular disease or high blood pressure and high cholesterol and diabetes and obesity and metabolic syndrome and kidney disease and all these issues, but the reality is that these issues are causing another problem. It's not that these issues are causing erectile dysfunction, it's that these issues are creating a circumstance in your body that is creating the erectile dysfunction. Now, the common denominator for a lot of those issues is going to be high insulin levels. When insulin goes too high and stays too high too long, it's going to create this insulin resistance and a very excessive inflammation and a lot of problems. But in today's video, you're going to understand why that's bad news. So to dig into why your little soldier doesn't want to stand anymore, we really need to understand the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is in charge of a lot of the body's activities and a lot of its functions that go on behind the curtain. These are things that we don't need to think about for them to happen. You don't need to think about your heart beating, it just kind of does that. You don't think about breathing. These are all functions that take place from the autonomic nervous system. And an erection is just like that. You don't think about, okay, become erect. And if you are thinking that, that's probably not helping a whole lot. But an erection is just something that happens when you are triggered for it to happen. You don't trigger it to happen with your brain. Go erection. That's not how it works. So this is all happening from the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system has 2 sides. It has the parasympathetic side, which is our rest and digest side. And it has a sympathetic side, which is our fight and flight side. Now, both of these sides are appropriate. The body needs both of them in certain circumstances. But what we need to understand for this topic is that when the body moves into this sympathetic fight or flight state, it changes the way the body is operating for that specific circumstance. So the body is made to deal with different circumstances. If you're being chased by a lion, the body is going to switch into this sympathetic state, and it's going to adjust how the body creates energy, and it's going to do everything it can to create a lot of excess immediate energy that can be used to deal with this emergency. If you're running from a lion, you're really trying to survive, so the body's going to help you out. It's going to push you extremely into this sympathetic state, help you create energy so that you can get away from this lion. It also sends more of our blood flow to major muscle groups and less to our extremities. So if you're a person that's really stuck in this sympathetic state most of the time, you may find that your hands are a little bit colder than like your tricep because your body is pumping more blood to these major muscle groups so that you can fight off or run away, and a little bit less blood to the extremities. Well, guess what? Your little soldier is an extremity, and you kind of need some good blood flow there for your little soldier to do his job. So what we need to understand is that for the reproductive system to work, we need to be able to move into this parasympathetic rest and digest state. We can't be in the fight or flight state if we want to reproduce. And that's the main thing to understand, is that an erection is there for us to reproduce. It's there so that this species can exist. It's not there for a good Saturday night. I know that you want it to be, but the reality is that it's a function that allows this species to exist on the planet. So it's kind of an important function. But when in nature or in life would it be appropriate to run from a lion and reproduce at the same time? That's not ever going to happen. That's not a circumstance that you're going to come across very often. So the body's not made to thrive in that particular circumstance. So the body puts its energy towards whatever task is more important at that time. And if survival is what's on the plate, the body's going to adapt towards survival, not towards reproduction in that moment. Does that make sense? So why would your body ever be able to thrive in a fight or flight state and reproduce at the same time? So what we see is that a lot of people will get stuck in either this parasympathetic state or this sympathetic state most of the time. They're not really able to switch them back and forth like the body should. And if someone's stuck in a parasympathetic state, they can see issues like seasonal allergies and asthma and a lot of other problems that come along with that imbalance. But with the sympathetic imbalance, we see things like maybe you fly out the handle a little bit too much because your body's in this fight or flight mode all the time. Maybe you're yelling at the mailman because you just don't like the shorts that he's wearing and issues like that. Maybe you get mad at stupid little stuff. But when a person is stuck in this sympathetic fight or flight state all the time, why would their reproduction work super effective? Shut up, phone! I'm trying to talk about getting it up right now. So when you understand a little bit how the body works, then all of a sudden it makes sense to ask your little soldier to work while you're in this fight or flight extreme state. You're asking the body to operate in a way that wouldn't make sense for it to operate. Now here's where a lot of confusion can set in, because we do hear a lot about, hey, reduce the stress in your life if you're having erectile dysfunction issues. Because stress in your life can push you into this fight or flight state. This stress response is just a body saying, hey, you need help dealing with whatever this emergency you feel like is going on. The body doesn't know the stress is coming because you're stuck in traffic and you're late for work. The body views that stress that you're experiencing as an emergency that the body needs to deal with. And you need to run from a lion, and it's going to change how the body functions and how it operates. So that makes sense, but what a lot of people don't understand is that it doesn't have to be stress in your life that can be pushing you into this overly sympathetic state. It can be stress in your body. So all of those issues we talked about at the beginning of the video, things like high blood pressure and high cholesterol and diabetes, all of these issues are signs of a significant stress that the body is dealing with. There's a significant burden going on. All of those issues don't happen unless the body's not really operating correctly or it's dealing with too many burdens. So the good news for you is that there are some misconceptions out there. A lot of people believe that when they have high cholesterol or obesity and high cholesterol, that these are all genetic issues that they were just dealt, and that's what they're stuck with. But the reality is that people fix these things naturally every single day. And it's just about understanding how to do that. So if you're dealing with issues like high cholesterol and type 2 diabetes and overweight issues, there's steps that you can take to correct those issues. Now, understand this. You can't really say, well, I'm on 4 different medications to bring down my blood pressure and my cholesterol number is pretty good, so those things shouldn't be a problem. You're not correcting the actual underlying cause when you're fixing it with a medication. You're just fixing that symptom of a high number on my blood test. I got a high number, so that's my symptom, and the medication can fix that particular symptom. The medications don't do anything to fix the actual underlying cause of those health issues. So if the actual underlying cause of the problem is there, then the body's still going to be in an emergency. It's still going to be in this overly sympathetic fight or flight state, even if the numbers on your test are showing up okay. The problem still exists, so the body's still stressed about it. So the great news is that you can fix those things. You can improve all those issues by changing the way that you're eating and poor lifestyle choices. The first thing you need to do is bring down any elevated blood sugar issues. If you're consuming high carbohydrate foods all the time, then you're creating high insulin levels, and that's creating a lot of inflammation and a lot of leading towards insulin resistance. If you already have type 2 diabetes or your fasting blood sugar is over 100, those are all signs that things are going awry and you need to take steps to turn that around, and the best part is that you can. Now, if you feel like, oh, well, I'm a carboholic and I gotta have my soda and all these things, then there's likely issues going on with digestion that are restricting your ability to digest proteins and fats correctly. And you're not pulling nutrients out of those foods, So your body needs these carbs that are a lot easier to break down and turn into fuel. So you may need to work on your digestion a little bit. And my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, can walk you through how to do that. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below that you can get it totally for free. And I'll get you the whole book for free so you can walk through how to reduce any of those cravings or remove your need for those carbohydrates if that's a real problem for you. Now, if you have high blood pressure or high cholesterol, my book also explains all those issues and the most common underlying causes for those problems and how to turn them around. I'll also give you a video about high blood pressure that you can check out at the end of this video. But an overly sympathetic state is the most common issue for this erectile dysfunction problem. And it's kind of easy to look at yourself. You can just look at your blood pressure and you can take that top systolic number and then subtract the middle diastolic number on an automatic blood pressure cuff. It goes systolic, diastolic, and then your pulse. So subtract the diastolic from the systolic, and that's going to give you what we call a pulse pressure. Now, if that pulse pressure number is higher than 46, that's a strong sign that you're leaning too far on that sympathetic side. So check your blood pressure at least 2 hours after a meal. Don't do it right after a meal, but do it at least 2 hours after a meal and not first thing in the morning. And then look at what that pulse pressure number is. And if it's leaning way over 46, that's a strong sign that you may be leaning too far in this sympathetic side all the time. Now, if you want to learn more about this overly sympathetic problem, we call it a sympathetic imbalance, my book in the appendix has a whole section about understanding the sympathetic imbalance, other markers that might show up if you're dealing with that, and steps you can take to improve it as well. But there is another issue that's very common, and it's very popular to talk about, and that's a nitric oxide issue. And not the nitrous oxide, not the laughing gas thing, but nitric oxide. And a lot of the fancy blue pills for erectile dysfunction kind of work on this nitric oxide pathway. And basically your blood vessels lining, or the endothelium, kind of produces our nitric oxide levels. But when a lot of these big stresses like high blood pressure and high cholesterol and diabetes and insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, when a lot of these things are present, it appears that the endothelium produces less of this nitric oxide. And is this in conjunction with being in an overly sympathetic state? We don't really get to know that. We see both of them together, so it's very common. But some people might suggest, hey, you can eat some of these foods that have higher levels of nitric oxide, like dark green leafy vegetables have higher levels of nitric oxide. But if you're not changing what's creating the problem in the first place, adding some extra spinach in is not going to do much. You can't keep eating cupcakes and ding-dongs and think that some green leafy vegetables are going to turn it all around for you. It's just not going to work out that way. So it's my opinion that this overly sympathetic state that's coming from some type of major stress in the body, whether it's high cholesterol, high blood sugar, or something else, is kind of pushing us out of that state where we can be in this parasympathetic rest and digest state where reproduction is appropriate. And nitric oxide may just be part of that formula that's going on. And keep in mind that this stress or burden that the body's dealing with that's pushing it into this fight or flight state could be some type of infection or overgrowth in the body that often goes undetected in a normal exam. Things like fungal or yeast or mold, bacterial overgrowth in the digestive system, and all kinds of stuff like that can create a significant burden with the body that's pushing it too far in this state. So the 5 steps you want to take to really see some improvement here is, number 1, watch that pulse pressure for yourself. You can watch your blood, a blood pressure cuff you can pick up for $30 at most pharmacies, and you can watch your pulse pressure and see, am I taking steps that's bringing it down closer to that 42 range? Somewhere in there is where you really want it to be. So watch that pulse pressure and see if you can create improvement there, and symptoms will often improve along with that. Number 2 is you really want to reduce your carbs, sugars, and especially liquid sugars. Liquid sugars hit our body a lot faster and a lot harder and create a lot more havoc because they go right in. So you have a soda or some type of alcoholic drink that processes just like liquid sugars, it's creating a lot of problems. And that's why you hear a lot of people talk about don't drink alcohol if you're having ED issues, because it's going to make it worse. It's because of that liquid sugar form, it's creating a lot of problems. Number 3 is to correct any high blood sugar or insulin resistance type issues, and we do that by reducing the carbs and sugars that we're consuming. And step number 4 is to improve any high blood pressure stresses that the body's dealing with. And when you bring down high blood sugar, you're also going to reduce blood pressure a little bit. You may need to take some other steps to improve the high blood pressure, but we'll talk about that in just a second. And number 5, step number 5 is an easy one. It's just simmer down. Find ways to reduce the stress in your life while you're taking all these other steps to reduce the stress in your body. Now, it can be just as simple as just relaxing for 2 minutes a day. Just find a way to make things not so stressful. And whether you need to talk to a counselor or something, whether you're screaming at your boss, those are significant issues that need to be addressed. But if you don't have that type of stress, sometimes it's just a matter of just finding a few minutes each day just to breathe for a few minutes. You don't need to meditate. All those things are super helpful, but I've had clients see a lot of results by just relaxing for 3 or 4 minutes and just make it happen every single day. And when you can reduce the stress in your life and in your body, then it'll often correct this overly sympathetic issue. So we'll put the link to that free book in the description below the video, and we also have a free digestion course that helps you walk through looking at your body chemistry and understanding if you're leaning too far on that sympathetic side as well. So if you'd rather not read, you'd rather just take a course, we have a totally free course, and we'll put the link to that in the description below as well. For now, if you are dealing with high blood pressure issues, check out our video on understanding the connection between high blood pressure and bile flow. I can't wait to hear about your results.